2 o'clock sharp, and if you know me, you know that I'm not always early, but I like to be on time. So we will get rolling, and hopefully we'll have a handful more join us as we get started. Katie, thank you for turning your video on. Melissa, of course, I'm grateful that you've got your video on. If others are able to, please do. Just because I'm just one of those weirdos that likes to see faces that I'm talking to as I'm talking, rather than staring at blank screens. Thanks, Ginger. You're the best. I appreciate that. Good to see you. Going to pump some iron. I love that. Love it. Respect it. Yeah. How's everyone doing today? I'd love to hear 1 or 2 or 3 points of gratitude. How are we doing today?
I'm great.
You're great? Why are you great?
Great. I just ran 2 miles, working on my arm flab, feeling good.
That's what drumming's for, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. Katie, how are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, everything's good on my end. I have a listing that I'm gonna be putting a name in the hat for the agent spotlight. Just because one of the buyer's agents here in our office has just been absolutely amazing to work with. And this is a tricky one because there's like solar panels involved, and she's been 1000% a team player and like helping me like because I guess in a past life she like tracked down like she can find out pretty much anything that you need to know.
She was a skip tracer once upon a time. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, right. So I'm gonna be throwing a name in the hat for that. So just grateful for just everyone here at the office who's just amazing to work with.
I love that. And that's the feeling is mutual from her. She and I talked about it because she's like, I've never faced this before. And she did say, yeah, Katie's been absolutely fantastic to work with, and she's been a team player. Like we're in this together.
Yeah, right.
When we're on the opposite side of messy deals, it doesn't always feel that way.
Right.
So way to be in culture, and yeah, I appreciate that.
Yep.
You know, that's not always how it goes. Well, if you're here, you are connected to the K1 network somehow, and it's fun to do this conversation this way. So I'm flanked by Melissa Jung, and as well as Danielle Sullivan, who's not teaching today, but we are the three team leaders in the K1 network. And both Danielle and Melissa, I respect. They're hardworking, they're smarter than I am, and they're very good at what they do. So I'm excited and grateful to be able to work alongside both of you. With that, Melissa, you've already unmuted. You preempted that. So Melissa and I are going to be kind of tag teaming a conversation around leadership today. I'm going to come with a caveat that leader is literally in my job title, but I feel insecure in teaching on leadership, just because even though I've been in leadership for a long time in various capacities, it's still a vulnerable thing. And because I know how fallen I am, how far short I fall on a regular basis, how I've let some of you guys even down at times in the ways that I've not communicated well or not approached a situation well. So though Melissa and I are co-leading this conversation, I'm speaking for myself. I'll let Melissa speak for herself in a minute. None of us have it all figured out. And so we are fellow journey people, not folks that have arrived. Melissa, I know you, but not everyone does. Give them the flyover. Who are you? What do you do? What did you do before you're doing what you do? And anything else that we should know about you?
Awesome. Well, first I want to say I'm grateful, so grateful to be on here with all of you and to be part of the K1 network. And Mark does not give himself enough credit, because when he asked me to join him on here, I was so thrilled. He's amazing. Danielle, I've just getting to know Danielle through coming into the K1 network, and you are amazing. So I'm honored to be here with you guys. I've been in the team leader role. This is my 6th year with Keller Williams Shervenick. Was an agent for 3 years prior, starting a small team when I stepped into this role. Pre-real estate, I my family are entrepreneurs. My mom and stepdad own a bunch of Subways, and my mom owns a boutique that I ran. I did hair and skincare for ladies going through chemotherapy and radiation, which led me to being part of Mary Kay. So I did the hair through the boutique and worked with the hospitals there, and then got involved with Mary Kay for the skincare items and ended up building a team and a unit there. So I recruited for them and helped the people on, I had a team of 200 women, and I helped them earn cars and things like that. So that through all of that, I always had this desire for real estate and started selling houses just part-time, and here we are. I fell in love with Keller Williams. I fell in love with this opportunity in this company. So being a leader is, it's hard sometimes. So I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's hard, I would say, a lot of the time. I didn't know, I knew about the general background, but not Mary Kay specifically. My mom, she had a chapter with Arbonne.
Oh, big competitor.
Yeah. Sorry, bad word. Sorry. See, like hives, just thinking about it. I would imagine there's probably a lot of parallels between running a successful cosmetic team business and running a successful real estate business or brokerage. So I'm sure you've connected the dots. In both of those roles, you know, when people say, Mark, how many people are you in charge of? I'm like, that's a really loaded question. It's like, well, I'm part of a small leadership team that carries out the mission of our brokerage. That being said, nearly everybody that I lead, quote unquote, it's an at-will relationship. They could send me an email tomorrow saying, hate your guts, I'm gone. And so it's a different type of relationship, which I would imagine was very similar to what you faced in the Mary Kay space as well.
Yeah.
I am going to do a share screen because we do have some exciting ground to cover today. Hopefully you can see that, and I am going to go into slideshow mode, and I hope that doesn't mess anything up. Oh shoot, it did.
Zoom has updated, so it's been so different today.
Okay. Did it just update today?
What? Well, no, like mine updated. I updated it the other day, but it's been different when you're sharing your screen.
Okay, I'm gonna figure this out.
You will. Just give it a minute. There you go.
Yeah, well, this is a version of it, and hopefully I can do it in slideshow mode because that's better.
You got it.
Okay, bingo. So there are faces. There's the two of us. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, and I think oftentimes when we're talking about, well, and when we have any class, it's very much like, what should I do in order to get this result? And so this conversation is going to be more of a conceptual conversation as we think through what is leadership, what are the priorities of leadership, what does the heart of the leader need to be, and then what habits should follow a good leader. So what today isn't is it's not as 3 steps to becoming your best self. It's more of, I would say, an opportunity for us to reflect and think a little bit more about the who of what we do than necessarily the what, if that makes sense. So these are the kind of the 4 things that we're going to look to hit on today. I would love, either in the chat or unmuting and sharing, I would love for a few of you to take a stab at what you think leadership is. Just spout off either a word or a phrase that comes to mind as you think about leadership. You can all jump at once.
Mentor.
Mentor. Okay, I like that. Who wants to add to that? Caring about others more than yourself and their results. I like that. Schmieder said the ability to guide and influence people. Katie said setting an example for others. So example setting, mentoring, guiding and influencing people, caring. So caring greater than yourself as well as their results. I like the add-on there, Danielle. It felt almost like an oh yeah results, which is funny to me because you're a very results. You get results. You get stuff done. So Melissa and I are going to be working off some notes from a session that we had the opportunity to attend. Gosh, when was that, Melissa? last May of 23.
I was just gonna say May, I think. We go to so many things. Yeah, it was May.
We do.
Yeah.
So, KW, we have these national conferences. I'm in a Zoom, sorry. There's a team swinging by with pastries right now, being good. So we went to this thing called Mega Leadership, and Gary hosted this session called Servant Productivity Leadership. And he says a good working definition of leadership is it's the ability to teach people how to think the way they need to think so that they can do what they need to do when they need to do it so that they can get what they want when they want it. It's about teaching people how to think. And as Danielle tagged on to her definition, it's action that leads to results. At the end of the day, we're in the people business, but we're also in the results business. You know, a leader, you know, let's think of a coach of an NFL team. Someone whose players love him but wins 0 games is not going to keep his job for long, right? And yet a highly successful coach whose players or, you know, a coach that's got all the strategies and the right idea but doesn't have the trust of his players is not likely going to stay for long. Even if they get some wins, there's going to be a corrosive culture there. Melissa, does this definition, I mean, you and I have heard it a dozen times. Does it resonate with you? Anything that you'd add to it or inflections that you'd put to it?
It definitely resonates with me. And it's interesting. You think as a leader, like people think, oh, well, we do what you say. You tell me how to do it. And it's not that simple. It's teaching people how to think. It's looking at where you want to be and maybe a system or model and teaching you to think about how you incorporate that with your business or with your goals, or, you know, it truly is teaching people how to think, because sometimes our thought process is so directed in a path that you have to take a step back and evaluate how you look at things. And as a leader, I think some of you said you lead by example, and sometimes that's people watch, and leading by example and teaching how to think, I think go hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think what strikes me and something that's really hit me in my time with KW is it's about what they want. And I think all too often we think leadership is about getting the thing done or winning. And I mean, think about with parenting. You know, I'm a parent. I think through that lens. I know many of you on this call are parents. Yeah, we can make our kids do stuff. Why, Daddy? Because I told you so. Is, you know, we've all had those moments, right? But if my goal is not to just modify my child's behavior in the short term, but is to help them be a better person in the long term, to create a good, you know, a good adult, not just a compliant child, it's about them wanting things and them wanting good things and me helping shape those desires. But it's ultimately about them. And I think all too often, when we think through leadership, it's about the leader's desire. And I think this kind of flips that notion on its head. Any thoughts or questions with the othersness of this framework? I'll keep going. And
I would say so too. It's relationship, just like it is for agents and your clients and your customers. It's a relationship. People don't want to know from you unless you've built a relationship with them and they know you care. It goes back to that saying you hear all the time. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So as a leader, it can't just be, well, I'm in this position, I'm a leader, and this is what you do. People want to know that you care and that they can trust you, and that you are thinking about them and not what you want. Because you'll get what you need when you help other people succeed. So it has to be that focus on those people.
Yes. And it's interesting, you know, Melissa and I, we consult with top producing agents on a regular basis, and many of them either run a team or are thinking about starting a team. And they say, well, but I don't want it to be all about me. And I think what they mean is like, if my face is on the sign, on their sign, they might have feelings about that. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, you're not going to win if it's all about you. You're going to win if the people in your world feel like you're invested in their success, that it's not fundamentally about you. And your name may be on the sign, and there's good reasons for you know, cohesive branding. But ultimately, good organizations win because the people feel like their goals matter, not just the leaders' goals matter. So this framework here may be familiar to some of you. Melissa and I, we actually have shared a coach for much of the last few years, and this is a framework that he introduced to me. And if you guys were in the office a couple weeks ago, that was John Reich shared this wisdom from John Maxwell. But what this does is not all leadership is the same, right? And I want you to think for a moment about a crummy leader that you've had in the past. Maybe it was a coach that just shouted. Maybe it was a teacher that had no control of the room. Maybe it was a boss or a mentor. I think through that person for a minute. Identify that person. And then conversely, I want you to think through the most exceptional leader that you've had the opportunity to be around, whether you were led by them directly or you simply had a front row seat to them leading. And so keep those two people in mind as we walk through this. So, and Melissa, chime in as I walk through this. So there's these 5 levels of leadership are, we'll start at the bottom. Position. I count this person my leader because they're literally my leader. They're my supervisor. They're my assistant manager. I follow this person we see over there on the right because I have to. They're the boss, and if I don't do my job might be threatened, or my starting position might be threatened, or whatever it might be. Many of us start there, but that's not a great place to live long term, right? Then we graduate from a position level of leadership to a permission level of leadership, and that's less about rights and it's more about relationship. People follow because they want to. There's trust here. I feel like this leader. I like them. They care about my life. They ask questions. There's a willingness there. From a relational standpoint, but relationship alone, as we've touched on, may not quite be enough. So that then leads to a production based leadership model where I follow them because of what they've done for the organization. This might be someone who, hey, they may be my supervisor. They may be in a number 1 position, but I also they crush it. They go out. I think of Cindy Carpenter on Jose's team, where she's in kind of a mentoring position for newer agents on that team. And you're going to follow her because you have to, because that's the model. You're likely going to follow her because she's a good person and there's warmth there. But you're also going to follow her because she kicks butt and she sells a lot of houses, and you don't want to be lazy around her. And so there's kind of a I'm gonna walk in their shoes because they know what they're doing. But we know that being a top producer doesn't make you a leader, but it can give you credibility. Then the next echelon is level 4, the people development level. This is where leaders are reproducing leaders. I follow them because of what they've done for me. Hey, maybe they gave me a shot. When my resume didn't support it. Maybe they acknowledged it and gave me a start on the team. Maybe they helped my family out when we were in need. Like there's a level of like indebtedness here, but you say, hey, I want to be more like that person. And then finally, the pinnacle where we all aspire to be is people follow us because of who we are and the quality that we have. Maybe they've done some things for me. Maybe they've walked the walk and produced results. Maybe we have a relationship. Maybe they're in a position of leadership. But at the end of the day, I follow that person because I respect them. And this isn't meant to be a brown nosing session, but I wouldn't be where I am if Jose was not, if I didn't have a pinnacle perspective in my relationship with Jose. Yes, he gave me a job, and yes, he's a top producer, and yes, we have a relationship, but at the end of the day, he walks the walk in life, and I've seen it for close to 5 years now to be able to know that he's the real deal, and I aspire to emulate that in some ways. Melissa, anything to add there? Anything that hits you there?
Yeah, vision. I think leaders have to, like when you talk about Jose, people have to understand your vision. And like I've only had experience with Jose probably in the past 5-6 months. And immediately with a leader like that, you feel the vision. Like I know that I want to follow that because of his vision. And when you lead anybody, it's even like leading your family, like when you talked with your kids earlier, when you mentioned your children, even with leading your family, they want to know that you have a vision of where you're going and you know how to get there. So that encompasses the respect, the people development, it's not just that, hey, this is my leader because they're in that position, but as you go up this triangle, the different levels, I think vision's super important.
That's a great addition. And Mike, thank you for going there. So he says the 5 levels of leadership, it's important to realize every new position you take, you start over from the beginning and you have to earn your way back up. And I would even add to that, that every person that you are in some sort of a leadership relationship with might be a different number. It's not like you are just like, oh, I'm a pinnacle leader. It's like, you may think you're awesome, but you might have a level 1 relationship with some of the people in your world. And so that's not a 5, that's a 1. The relationship is in the eye of the beholder, not on your resume or what your KPA says about you. And that's challenging because a year or two ago when John introduced this model to me, he said, all right, think of the 8 or 10 people that you relate with in a leadership capacity on the most consistent basis. Go line by line, go person by person through and rate where you believe that relationship is. And I had to be honest. I'm like, yeah, I've got some 3s and 4s. I didn't give myself a 5 anywhere. I got some 3s and 4s, but yeah, if I'm honest, I probably have a 1 and a 2 in there as well. And I think that was good for me because I'm one who can, want to think that things are always just hunky dory, and we know that they're not. But to think through, and that's a takeaway for any of you as you think through. Okay, who are the people in my world? Maybe it's my team. Maybe it's my family. Maybe it's colleagues. Where would I rate that? And if you're in an at-will style relationship, say you lead an ALC committee, they're not your employees. It's not really a position-based relationship. You don't have that much heft behind it. And so you have to lead in other ways. So just a helpful framework for me. All right, so we're going to talk about the priorities of the leader, people versus outcomes, and then so priorities, heart, and habits moving forward. So this, we can send this to you guys after the fact, but this is a framework where we think about, why do people get into business with us and why do they stay in business with us? And we may say, oh, people get into business with me because I'm a good person or because we like each other. They may get into relationship with you because of that, but they don't stay in a relationship with you from a leadership standpoint because of that. And so we'll just walk through this as a framework as we think through, if Ginger, I'm looking at you. Thank you for having your camera on. Like, hey, you've got people in your world and you're looking to attract more people to your world, as well as keep the people that you like in your world continuing to be happy and productive. And so the me in this framework is them. So I'll just use Joel as an example because Joel is a kick butt agent on Ginger's team. Happy Joel. Hey, here I am. Not a care in the world. Then he discovers that he has a need. I want to make more money, or I want to be more fulfilled in a different facet of my career. I need to step into real estate. Then he seeks and or discovers an individual and or a team who might have the means to that fulfillment. Oh, okay. Real estate is that career. Wait, Ginger seems smart and seems like knows what she's doing, and she's a fantastic person. She might be my means to fulfillment. Then at step 4, you can't see my cursor. He joins the team and kind of embarks on that journey. The means are provided. So means are not the ends. The means are, hey, here's the training, here's the tools, here's the value prop of the team in action. And if we go straight up there, that means the need was fulfilled. Yay! I'm happy, and we'll rinse and repeat. or the need is unfulfilled, and realizes that he has a need. And we see that there's arrows between all of these things, but when we're in the leadership, the world of leadership, we're consistently asking the question, what do our people need? And do they feel the progress along that cycle? It's not just, oh, I moved from having a need to need being fulfilled and then it stops, because, not to have Ginger unmute and chat about Joel, but it's like, hey, the things he wants and needs now are different from the things that he wanted and needed a couple of years ago when he was getting started. He doesn't need to learn how to put together a purchase agreement. He needs to know that he's got, the flexibility to do things the way he wants to do them, the opportunity to make infinite, income, and so her relationship with him is going to change from that. So another helpful framework. Melissa, anything that you'd chime in on that?
Yes, I think that as a leader of a team or whoever you're leading, that sometimes when you have somebody who wants to grow or they have a need that needs to be fulfilled, sometimes it can be scary thinking, maybe I don't know the answer to that. Maybe when I'm meeting with a super high producer, I personally haven't been to that level. I haven't done that, so I don't know the answer. I think it's really important to know that you can be the connector. Doesn't always have to come from you. You can connect people to the person, the team, the thing that can fulfill that need. And it's really important that your world, that you have relationships in those worlds to be able to connect.
Yes. I just got off a call earlier today where a top producing team leader was saying just that. She stepped into a role, and I was that way. I stepped into the role when I was brand new and didn't know anything about real estate, candidly, from a sales standpoint. And Jose had to tell me, it's not about having all the answers. It's about building relationships, and it's about being able to find answers, which I think is a really, really fantastic point. All right, as we lead others, what comes first? The goal, the outcomes, or the people? Who wants to take a sec? You can jump in the chat or unmute. Who wants to make a case for one or the other, relationships or outcomes first? You guys are quiet.
Relationships.
Relationships. Why?
Because I think you have to, if I'm just speaking of a real estate team, I think that you have to have a good relationship between team leader and an agent before either of you can get to a great outcome.
I'll buy that. Who wants to add or provide a counterpoint?
I would, Mark. I kind of, to build on what Ginger said, I think so much of great outcomes is based on trust from the beginning, which obviously comes from the relationship. Sometimes folks don't always necessarily understand the full objective from the beginning, but if they trust you and they trust that you're not going to take them down a merry path, you will be much more likely to eventually get to that outcome.
Yes. Melissa, what's your vote?
So I think it depends on the person, because I've had agents that I've worked with that they had to see the outcome. I had to help them get to the outcome in order to earn their trust in the relationship. So it's interesting. It can be either one. I would say majority is relationship, but there are going to be those times where you're going to earn that relationship and trust through the outcome.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm one who would very naturally vote relationship, because I think at the end of the day, things rise and fall on relationships. But to your point, with many personality types, you earn the opportunity for that relationship by proving it. Just think of going on a listing appointment. They may like me, but liking me while I'm incompetent is not going to win me that listing. I need to be able to show data, show facts, explain my value proposition clearly, and give them confidence in the outcome in order to earn the relationship. So I think that's a great counterpoint. I would say similarly, if you're in a relationship with someone long enough and the desired outcome, say, hey, you're gonna make 100 grand on my team because my team kicks butt and does all these things. And at the end of year one, they've made 50 grand. I might like you, but that outcome does not support the reason, the ultimate reason that we got into relationship in the first place. And so I think this is a good framework to say, where do I tend towards? And not that everything boils back to the disc, but like, hey, if I'm a super high DC type that just likes to win and see the the thermometer move forward on my goals, I might need to work on the relationship side. That's Jose, and he'll claim that. Or if you're more like me, or maybe like Liz, hey, like let's build a relationship. Like let's get to know one another. The person on the other side might be saying, yeah, but what's in it for me at the end of the day? I think both of those things are true. So the heart of the leader, and this is I'm excited for this aspect of the conversation, because I think I listened to a podcast recently where the host, and they're talking about finances and business. He says, all too often we're trying to solve things with strategies and spreadsheets, things that could be more easily addressed with a walk outside or a talk with a friend or a therapist. And that sounds like simple, but at the end of the day, our hearts, and I'm using that in the sense of like what makes us us, and how we approach our lives and what matters to us, that matters more than strategies. All right, ego. Most of us hear the word ego, and I would say probably have a negative response. Oh, ego's a bad thing. I'm assuming I'm not the only one that has that kind of natural connotation. And Gary, this is a framework from that class that Melissa and I went through. He says, no, we all have an ego. Everyone has an ego. The choice of what ego focus we choose is one of the most important decisions of our life. So ego, it's your sense of self. It's not to go back to the early psychologists, but it's my understanding of me. Ego is not a bad thing. Having a hyperinflated ego is often what we recoil against. But I would also argue the other end of that spectrum of having a groveling, I am worthless sense of self. Like that's an ego thing too. You just have a different type of ego issue, and neither one of those is the right place to be. A healthy ego has the appropriate sense of self. Melissa, do you want to talk about the difference between me-go and we-go that Gary chatted about with us a couple years ago?
Sure. So it's funny because when I heard this, I thought the same thing. Ego, like you always associate ego with being like, oh, he's got such a big ego. But it's so true. Ego, me-go is all about me. And ego, we-go is about us leading. Who am I leading? And where I go, they're going to go. And it's that focus on others. It's the focus on decisions and thinking about others when you're making those decisions. So, gosh, and when you talk about sense of self-worth or importance, as a leader, your people want to know that you value those things. Like sometimes that's part of the ego is the ego that you share or you teach is teaching people like your self-worth is not based solely on success, on winning. The ego in leadership is I'm going to lead you to success, but through that, we're going to fail, we're going to fall, but I'm going to be there to pick you back up. We're going to get up, we're going to continue to do this. And I think leaders with maybe the me-go and the ego focus are more focused on winning. Listen, I'm competitive. I love to win, but you have to know that in order to win, you're going to fail. And you have that ego of we're doing this together. And if we fail, we're going to get up. We're going to win. We're going to fail forward to those successes.
I think in this framework, I think of the old Brian Regan skit, which I'm hoping I'm not the only person that has seen it, where he talks about the me monster, and it's the guy that comes to the networking event or the happy hour, and he's just like, he can't help but let me tell you about the best thing that I've done, or I walked on the moon, like he just can't get out of his own way because he is so awesome. And we can all think of someone either in our lives or in public culture that checks that box. And our culture kind of rewards Migo sort of bravado. I think the differential between leaders who operate WeGo versus MeGo is who gets credit when something goes well and who takes blame when something doesn't go well. Um, uh, it can be very, I had something go poorly recently, and I had a part to play in it, and others did too. And I could have chosen to just do that. And we all know that that's not a way to build trust with others. That's not a way to strengthen your influence and relationship with others. But it's tempting because it makes me look cleaner if I do that. And so the WeGo leader says, "Hey, I want to apologize for dropping the ball there. I want to apologize that I didn't make things clearer." We've all been in a situation with those in our, let's just use a sales team as an example, where maybe it's a newbie who knows some things but doesn't know lots of things. They're not really owning it yet. And we're frustrated. And gosh, they didn't show up to that thing, or they didn't a couple weeks in a row of not hitting their numbers, or whatever the way that they're not carrying the ball forward. Amigo leader is going to go finger pointing, you didn't, shame on you. A WeGo leader would say, I need to own the fact that I didn't make the standards as clear as I should have. And I want to apologize for that. And I want to get clear on those standards now, so that we don't find ourselves in this, this murky situation moving forward. And so clearly they're not taking the appropriate ownership away from the person that's not doing their stuff, but they are owning a part of it to say, hey, I could have taken my DNA there. So blame shifting and credit taking are, I think, two frameworks that are helpful as we think about ego, migo, WeGo. This one is really helpful. This presents the fact, an image, making clear that we're all unique people that have unique backgrounds, that carry trauma and joy and perspective that's different. The people who woke up feeling differently, was it yesterday morning? Gosh, yes, yesterday morning after the election, it factors into this. We're all unique people. We're not just a set of beliefs or a set of activities. And so this is kind of a counselor's lens at the individual, their willingness to be led, their relationship with lying or hiding feelings, their relationship with openness and honesty, whether they're getting sick or feeling great, their relationship with authority figures, like all of that factors in to the people that we're seeking to lead, but that also factors into us. We've all got stuff there. No leader can just say, I'm just going to erase all of those because none of those things factor into me. And so the point that I want to make here is that a good leader acknowledges the uniqueness and the, therapeutic underpinnings, so to speak, of the people that we're seeking to lead, and realizes that as we lead others, those arrows in cycle on the outside kind of shapes that person's perspective of leadership. But it's a journey, and it's a continually kind of iterative cycle that warms people towards you. And so, some people are very passive in the way that they approach leaders. Other people are much more aggressive. Some people blame and tattle. Some people don't. And so that all factors in. And a good leader is attuned to those things while not providing an escape or necessarily a way out based on those things. Melissa, anything to add there? We don't need to go too deep, but there's a lot there.
Yeah, a couple of things. What comes to mind when I see this, and we talked about this at leadership, is a couple things. KPA, DISC, DISC, those are things that we can use to understand the person we're leading and how they respond to things. And then the third thing is listening. I think sometimes if you just listen more, you can lead better through these different areas. When people are in these different areas of experience, sometimes people don't want, they just want you to listen. So I think understanding the personality, how they respond, the DISC, the KPA, and then again, listening, that's something that's huge for leaders.
I really appreciate you highlighting the KPA. I know many of us at Legacy are like familiar with it. Many of you have done it, but most of you, and I'll take blame for this, haven't gone as deep down the rabbit hole as you can. And if that's you, like, let's talk, because I would love to be a resource there. But particularly when you do the job fit report, which is the big hairy scary one that takes 45 minutes to do, and kind of matches you for the role that you're in, there's a section that talks about there's what's it called? It's like the overall description. It's like a 3/4 of a page, kind of like, who are you? What makes you tick? What's your ideal work environment? Good leaders are wise to utilize that and lean on that. And I've done that a couple of times with people in my world and look back, oh, huh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense why they are feeling that, why they're expressing themselves in that way. That's a little bit different than what I'm used to. So use the tools that you've got. I think that's a really great addition. This is something that I pulled from a grad school. I had a seminary professor, so I was in a pastoral training environment before real estate. And he says that the effective leader's goal, and this is from a book called Leadership on the Line, the effective leader's goal is to be the least blank person in the room. Anyone want to take a stab at the word there? Okay, I'll just tell you. To be the least anxious person in the room. We could say the least angry or the least dominant or the least whatever. Chime in on the chat or unmute. Why do you think he said that? The author said that, and let's just riff on that as we think about the heart of a leader.
Never expected you to say anxious there. That's interesting.
You're surprised? Just process with me. Why do you think?
Because I always think of a leader as someone who holds up their people, mindset as we will all be successful the more I lift them up. So my thought was to be the least important person in the room.
Sure. We could put any number of things there, and that's, I think, yeah, least selfish or least self-centered or least me-go-y person in the room, but the least anxious person in the room. And this is not a strike against those who deal with very real anxiety, but any situation. I'm looking at Katie. So say Katie and I are on a team, and we just ran an event that went poorly. Some things, someone didn't show up on time, not enough people, good things happen, but bad things happen too. An unhealthy leader would be tempted, and I've been this leader before, I'll confess it. I may not be coming in hot, but I'm coming in feeling as though it's my job to kind of channel the anxiety. What went wrong? What can be better? I need to kind of hyper focus on the things that didn't go well. And many of us, and this is getting therapeutic for a minute here, many of us use worry and anxiety as a form of control. If I stop worrying about something, that means I'm lazy about it, or I'm not caring about it. And so I'm going to use worry and anxiety as my mechanism to continue to seek to control it, which I think we all do that in different ways. But this author's point was to be the least anxious person in the room is say, hey, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? What are our standards? It's able to lean on what's been agreed upon, decided about, non-reactionary, because I think anxious and reactionary can be different words. And I remember, because I like you, Ginger, was surprised when I read that, like, at least anxious. And so it jumped out to me. And so I want you to think about when's the next setting, whether it's a one-on-one with someone that you're leading, maybe a committee where people are underperforming, maybe it's a team that's not where they're at. What does that look like for me to lead with strength, but not with anxiety? Liz, are you going to?
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Katie.
If Liz was going to chime in, I'll default. No, I was just going to say, just like being collected, like, not because, going back to your comparison with having children is that if I'm like anxious and I'm high strung and I'm worried about something, my kids pick up on that energy and all of a sudden they're anxious and they're high strung and they're worried. So I think it's more so like with being anxious, just being like that calm, cool, and collected. Like, okay, yeah, something might not have gone the way that we planned, or something might have failed in a certain way, but not dwelling on that, but saying, okay, but what did we learn from that? And how are we going to change moving forward? So again, I just think it's being like a collected, like, like, oh, we're not going to focus on the thing that didn't go well. We're going to, learn from it, and then we're going to move forward and do things differently the next time. So that's kind of like anxious. It just makes me think of, yeah, how people respond to, because a leader being anxious will make someone who they're leading be anxious as well.
I think parenting is a great analogy, Katie. I appreciate you highlighting that. There are times where my wife and I are like such helpful foils for one another, and then there are other times where we are not. And there will be times where I come home after a long day with my own cares. She's had her long day with 4 children at home. Her job's a heck of a lot harder than mine. And I feel as though, and I might come home and she's like, jumping on Peter for misbehaving. And I feel as though the right thing for me to do is just to kind of also channel that energy. And it's like, no, this is not good. I don't need to fight with her, but also how can I be a helpful, strong presence that's not adding fuel, and vice versa. For those of us that went to ALC clinic a few weeks ago, Nikki Ubaldini said, when someone comes in with an issue or a problem or a fire to put out, her response is, do you want my reaction or do you want my response? And a reaction is like, oh man, how could they? Or let's call them now. Or it's the hot emotional response. Whereas a low anxiety response is measured. It's like, okay, well, what should we do about that? It's more calculated and thoughtful. And so just an encouragement there, a little bit of a curveball. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of some of the habits of leading versus managing, use of time, and delegating versus serving, which is a fun conversation. So as you look at this list, I've held the title of manager before. Management is one of the, it's a commonly used word in our vernacular for business and the way we work together. And Gary put this list in front of us, and basically he searched what are synonyms for manage or management, and then what are synonyms for leading or being led. And so synonyms for manage are arranged, contrived, engineered, maneuvered, regulated, supervised, watched over, taken care of, ruled, ordered, dictated, versus guided, affected, influenced, swayed, prompted, counseled, won over, coached, convinced, brought around, advised. What strikes you about the difference between those two words, especially as it's more fleshed out like that? Anyone want to reflect on that? Melissa, how about you?
I would love to take this one. I'm going to share a personal story with you guys. So my husband is a general manager. He's in the car business. He has a dealership. And so he manages and has for a very long time. And we will compare stories sometimes. And he's like, why do you do that? This is what you do. You have a system. And he's always said, you can't manage a person, which we know you can manage a system, but you don't manage a person. But there's such a difference between managing and leading. And it's just funny because we'll have conversations and I'm like, we don't do things like I'm leading people. Our people are 1099 employees. They want to be led. They're not here to be managed. Real estate professionals, we're entrepreneurial people. We want to be led. And there's just such a difference, even though, again, I don't believe you manage people because we love people. And I know my husband loves a lot of his people, but there's a system. I love you, but this is what you have to follow. This is what we manage. And for leaders, again, we're all people oriented, relationship oriented, and leading is, like you said, to guide, to influence, to win over, to coach. Yes, it's, this didn't work, but what could we do differently? I'm here for you. I'm growing. We're all growing and learning and every day. And I just think there's such a huge difference between that and this conversation that my husband and I have back and forth. It makes me laugh because it's just so different in that space than it is in Keller Williams. I think even in other real estate offices, they have managers. When I don't know about you, Mark, but when I talk with recruits, they cannot understand how we don't have a manager in the office. It's so mind-boggling to them.
Yeah, he's the office manager. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah.
teach you, we're going to lead you, we're going to teach you how to build a business, we're going to lead you, we're going to help you grow, but I'm not going to manage you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciated the distinction that you made. We do manage processes, we do manage systems, we manage checklists, we manage our time. Like the inanimate gets managed, our money gets managed, but people don't. Like if you put yourself on the receiving end of this, anybody want to be dictated? Anybody want to be ruled or taken care of? No. Maybe it's the American freedom spirit in us, and other cultures might not have such an issue with that. But I think from an application standpoint, as we think through, okay, what's my next management conversation? What's my next conversation with someone who maybe not be carrying the ball forward as much as I'd like for them? And as I think through my approach to that conversation, would they be able to use more words on the left or more words on the right to describe my posture towards them? So let's just use it as an example. And Katie, I'll put you on the spot since I see you and you've been kind to engage with us. Say you're leading an agent who's not doing what they need to do. They're not showing up. They're late to the open house that they said they'd host. Like they're just not holding up their end of the bargain. How would, let's just say, using the word coached versus the word supervised, how might that change the way that you approach that conversation with that person?
Well, rather than like reprimanding them or, using negative talk, I would say, let's remember, like, why did you get into this? You got in, you're running an open house because you're trying to build either trying to sell a listing or you're trying to build your buyer base. And when you do that, it's important that you're there on time. It's important that you do this and you do that. You have your feature sheets there, you have all of the information, so just redirecting them on let's remind you on why you're doing these things. You're not going to get everything out of your career that you can if you're not thoughtfully doing the things that you need to be doing in order to be successful. So that's kind of like how I would handle it. I would say, more so like, let's circle back. Like, why are we doing an open house? Why are we meeting with sellers? Why are we doing these things? And look at their motivation.
Yep. And if we think, I think coached is a good word to tie back to the definition of leadership. It's at the end of the day, helping people get what they want. And so we don't come in this way. It's like, hey, first of all, we identify what happened. Was there something going on that I wasn't aware of? We're leading with the relationship, and then going back to like, hey, I know that open houses aren't exciting, but remind me how much you're hoping to make in the next year. Okay, this is and it's rooting them in what they want, not in that these are the standards or shame on you. We're coaching them towards their goals, and we could spend an hour just role playing that conversation alone because accountability is hard. But I think the led versus managed framework is a helpful check for me as I think about those types of conversations. All right, this is just kind of a few spitball concepts. Melissa, I want you to talk with me as you think about your role. And we all have different roles, but talk with me about use of time. If you're a leader, you've got competing priorities, you got people that are clamoring for your attention, you got things that you need to get done, you got things that you're better at than others. How do you think about prioritizing your time?
Oh, it is so important that you do prioritize your time, and time block. Like time blocking is huge. It changes your world. And the 80-20 rule applies to us too. We got to focus on the 20% activities that's going to bring you 80% of the results. And what are those? So when I look at my use of time, you have to look at your personal life, your family, you know, depending upon what that looks like. I know for my time blocking, I put in there in my time blocking, my coffee time with my husband in the morning, quiet time, because that means I can't pick up my phone and look
Yeah.
at it, email or anything. Like that time has to be dedicated to what I time blocked it for. One thing that changed my life completely, and Mark mentioned we both share the same coach, is breathe time. I would put in my schedule. I color coordinate things that are green are money making activities, things that are red are things I are non-negotiable, I can't change for that day. But I would put all these things in there. Blue would be family things, and I could look at my schedule. They say you should be able to look at your schedule and it should reflect your goals. By color coding it, I can look at it and go, did I hold enough recruiting appointments? Those are green. My red are my meetings with the agents. And, you know, did I do this? One thing that changed, guys, that made it so, it just changed my life was putting breathe time in there. So I have put 30 minutes of breathe time somewhere throughout my day, and being able to stop, go outside, walk away, go get a coffee, whatever that looks like, just changes my mindset sometimes. And putting your use of time, putting it in time blocking doesn't always mean that time block is going to stay exactly. You're going to run through that schedule and it's going to be perfect. But I know the things that I can move and adjust. And when I get through the day, if there's things that I didn't get to, I'll move it over to the next day. You get to that next day and that you don't get to that and you move it again, by the end of the week, you're going to be going, okay, I have to get this thing done. So I would say time blocking, breathe time in your schedule, and then a rundown at the end of my day. Every day at 4:30 on my calendar is a rundown. That's who did I talk to today that maybe I need to follow up with. If I didn't get something done on my schedule throughout the day, I'm going to move that over to the next day. It's going to be first thing. Like I'm going to look at my day in the morning and I'm going to put that in first thing. So the breathe time, the time blocking, and the rundown for use of time, have that, I would say that's one of the most important things as a leader, because you can get burnout. You don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and managing your time blocking actually goes right into, I believe, in delegating too. You can look at that time blocking schedule and say, this is what I can do. And if I can't, who am I delegating this to? My schedule starts to get really full. Do I need to be doing this? Maybe this is something I need to delegate to someone else. And sometimes it's hard to delegate. I remember looking at my schedule going, I'm not real sure what I can delegate here, because I need to do all these things. But if someone can do what you're doing 80% good as you got to delegate it. And is that thing that you're looking at doing, is it serving you as a leader? Is it serving your people, or is that something someone else can do?
We do it, we delegate it, or we delete it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mark
then
King,
sorry.
Mark King, the former president of KW, would encourage a periodic audit to say, what am I doing that if I stop doing it, nobody would really notice? And we all have things like that. None of us can say, oh, literally 100% of my time is dollar productive. You know, like what am I doing? Is there some process, some system, some habit that nobody would notice if I stopped doing? Similarly, other side of that is what am I doing that if I started doing a whole lot more of it would make the biggest difference in my world, and try to change those ratios. That's kind of one thing thinking. A couple other thoughts as we race towards 3 o'clock. Delegating versus serving. This has been a challenging concept for me. For me, the leader is the servant leader. They're not unwilling to do anything. They're willing to mop the bathroom if that's what's needed. They're willing to grab a screwdriver and fix something. They're willing to, they're not too high and mighty for anything. And I still believe that to be true. At the same time, the leader is continually asking the question, what are the things in my world that only I can do? And continually seeking to say, I want to be a leader that my people know that I'm willing to do whatever, and that I'm a servant leader by heart, but I'm also seeking to be as effective as possible. And their world grows the more that I focus on my one thing. So if our market center is growing and our top producers are becoming more productive and we're growing in those ways, my team's going to be taken care of, because we've got more than enough issues to deal with over time. There's security in that. And so I would encourage you, we all have things that we think, I have to do this, or if not me, then who? What needs to be delegated, and what do I need to? In what ways do I need to show up as a servant leader? And then just just a final note that's more just a plug is that the leader's always learning. We're never done learning, and I must confess that I've never been great at the growth plan, which charts out exactly here are the things that I'm going to do each month of this year in order to develop as a leader. But the posture of a leader, the fact that you're on this Zoom tells me you're looking to raise your lid. I'm reading, I'm listening, I'm growing. You're asking that question on a consistent basis. So that's just a plug there. It's 3 o'clock on the nose, and I want to respect y'all's time. That being said, I do have a few minutes. If anyone does have ahas, kind of something that you heard fresh for the first time, or a question that you want to bring to the table before we call it. Anyone?
I've never
No.
heard the me go versus we go. I thought that was really good. When I was in school, like when I was going to Kent, we did a, psychology class. So we were talking about the ego and super ego and id. And so like I knew that term like in that perspective. But to your point, like, having an ego is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's, but are you just looking at yourself? Or are you looking at it as everyone, like we're moving forward together? So I thought the me go versus we go was a really cool point.
Yeah, it's a helpful framework for sure. Melissa, any parting thoughts from your corner?
No, this was really good. I think that some people, it's hard to have these kind of conversations about leadership. And I think that you guys all being on here and constantly wanting to learn and know how to lead, we're all constantly growing and growing together in a leadership role. So I just think this was a really cool class that you did.
Yeah, thanks for contributing and bringing your wisdom, and we'll do more of this. As I was going through the content, like, oh, there's so much to be talked about here. So something that we do a little bit more of in 2025. All right, y'all, go win a listing, go put out a fire, and we'll see you next time.
It was awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Liz.
Okay.